Return of the SPAC. Cut to the video, and the intro has Mark Morrison's Return of the Mac. I can already see it now.
And then like your face is right there.
Yeah. So SPACs been beaten down. We've talked about it. Clover was a SPAC. We've talked about the Chamath SPACs beaten down, but SPACs overall have been largely beaten down. And I think the question becomes, are SPACs dead? And along those same lines, will they come back? And you have to decide which one. Are they dead or will they come back? And that's kind of my question to you. We know there's a lot of shitty SPACs, and there's a ton out there. I think there's fear around regulation and crackdowns on SPACs. I don't think they go away. I do think regulation increases, but short term that sucks. Long term, I think that's a better thing.
Yeah.
But what say you as far as that? Do you think SPACs come back? Because last year this time, anything that had SPAC on it would just shoot up at any given time.
I think that's the hysteria surrounding around SPACs is never coming back. Mm-hmm. I think that there's somewhere a meeting of the middle. Whereas right now, nobody wants anything to do with them.
Yeah.
And, 3-4 months ago, everybody wanted something to do with them. And so I think that there's going to be something in the middle. And I think it's going to come down to what companies are actually going to merge into a SPAC that are worth a shit.
Yeah.
It's the ones that celebrities are getting into that have no real business model, all that good stuff. I think those are going to get weeded out, and they already have been. And the ones that are going to really shine are the ones that we've talked about on this channel before. I think Clover's still very much in that conversation. We've talked about SoFi, which went crazy today too. Just some really good ones that actually have good business models, good business models, and are good companies. I think will become good stocks, despite whether or not they come in as a SPAC or an IPO or what have you, direct listing.
Yeah. So I want to delineate sort of how we define that. But before that, I'll say I'm incredibly bullish on SPACs, and I think that. I mentioned this last year. I think there will become a point where we will no longer get an opportunity for SPACs, just like we no longer got an opportunity for IPOs.
Yeah.
Like that's the challenging thing with IPOs is like the institutions win. I believe that there'll be a clear delineation between good SPACs and shitty SPACs, and I think that'll be through regulations. And I think what will end up happening is you'll have to get a SPAC before the merger partner is announced. Now you can get a SPAC when the merger partner is announced and get at that $10 key level, and it's just sitting there where before a run. Yeah. I don't think that's going to stay, and it's a very unpopular opinion I have, but I have strong conviction in this because it's too straightforward not to change. And so I believe this week is a critical turning point. I think a couple things may happen, and this is clear speculation on my part. The reason why I feel confident, SoFi consummated their reverse merger yesterday, so they switched over to ticker yesterday. Yep. That was IPOE. That's doing really well. Bark did the same thing today. Bark is doing extremely well, BARK. That was STIC. We've been on that.
Been on that for a while.
We've been on that for a while, and that's done really well. And we haven't seen this move in a minute from SPACs in the same way. And so my thing that's running through my mind is, okay, is this it? Like, are people starting to feel okay with it now? And so I think that's the first step. The next step, I think, is I think we're going to see some more SPACs launching. We know that Chamath has 3 that he's filed for. I think we're going to hear announcements on that. His IPOD, IPOF. I think I don't want to say he leads it, but he's a major catalyst in the SPAC market. And if the market's in favor of him, SPAC should hopefully move in the same direction. I'm extremely bullish on it. And I think that we're going to get to a point where we've got to create some parameters on what we look for in a SPAC. So I have some ideas, but what would you look for as far as if you don't know who the partner yet is for a reverse merger for a SPAC, but you're thinking about getting in one?
I think it comes down to reputation and
reputation of what?
Of the board members that are involved with the SPAC, like Chamath, for example. Like, I'm going to go with something like a Chamath or even something like a Churchill Capital, CCIV, for example.
Yeah,
that's doing well today. Lucid Motors is coming into them. Companies that don't go after just anything. that are going to go after the solid companies. PACX, you had brought that one up. I think that that's going to be a good one too. But so looking at these particular companies and what they've done in the past, I think could lead to what they may do in the future. Obviously, it's never a guarantee, but that's I think, in my opinion, a really good starting point is the leadership that's involved in these SPACs.
Yeah, Pershing Capital is another one that gets brought up as a leader in that.
Yep. I'm not a big fan of Bill Ackman, but
yeah. So shout out. So you did mention PACX. I want to bring that up because that's been on the watch list. I actually hold that as a long-term play.
Yeah.
They just announced their reverse merger partner last week, which was Acorns.
Yeah.
And it hasn't moved yet, but that merger will happen in the coming months. And I expect that to do really well. But I do think you have to start with leadership, track record of leadership. And you can do due diligence in that. And so we've talked about IPOF. I mean, Chamath, for anything knock that people have on him, the one positive I'll say is he has a great leadership team, and he's very intentional on who he brings in to his SPACs. But looking at leadership, looking at the investment in the SPAC, so how much funding.
Funding.
That's going to be important. And what split, if you can get the information on how much of a kickback the original shell company SPAC is going to get, right? Like that's going to be important as well because, it's usually in the form of shares, and how much of that goes to the original SPAC owner. But you can look at all those, but it never hurts to look at leadership and look at track record because a SPAC doesn't need to be a long-term play. You can sort of delineate the timeline on when those moves are going to happen. And that's why I'm saying something like PACX, Acorns gets announced, it stays at that $10 mark. I imagine at the reverse merger vote, it's going to move. But just like STIC, last Thursday, STIC was at like $10.
Yeah.
And then it went up 10% on Friday. It's moved 30% in 3 trading days.
Yeah.
You didn't have an opportunity.
Right.
What's up, Rajiv?
It's pretty crazy.
Is Clover still moving?
Yeah, Clover is, it was moving. It's at 877 right now. But.
So I think that SPAC, make sure you're intentional with it, but I think there's huge opportunities in SPAC, and I think the story it's only the beginning of the story for SPAC, especially because IPOs are shitty for retail investors, and I think that's going to be where things start moving into. Don't sleep on SPAC. That's the thesis for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that like it's like we've been saying in the overall market that it's a stock picker's market, and you can make some serious cash if you know what to be in.
Yeah.
And so I think that the same narrative kind of follows along with this. Is like you just have to know what you're looking for and what you want to be in, because I think that's going to separate the winners from the losers. It's not that you can just throw a dart at any one of these SPACs and win. You got to know what you're looking for.